Good morning, good afternoon, or maybe it's a good evening to all of you who are tuning in from across the United States. We are delighted that you're joining us today for our 31st USPTO Hour, hosted by the Office of the Chief Communications Officer. If this is your first time joining, well, welcome. But if this is your 31st time joining, welcome back. My name is Christy Whitaker, and I'm a Public Affairs Specialist in the Office of the Chief Communications Officer, and I have the privilege of being your moderator today. We have a great program lined up for you, but before we get started, I'd like to invite you to send any questions you have about the content shared today to our inbox at USPTO@USPTO.gov. Now, I know you're ready to hear from our presenters, so let's go ahead and get started. Our first presenter is Jason Clark, Director of Strategic Initiatives. Jason?
Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody who's joining us here today. As Christy noted, I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives here at the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and I'm here today to tell you about one of our big initiatives here in the year 2026. Now, if you're like me and you grew up on Disney storybooks, do you remember when you put the cassette tape in, the narrator would say, "Turn the page when you hear the chime." Well, I don't have a chime and I don't have the ability to turn the page. So you're going to hear me from time to time say next slide. So at this point, I'd like to say next slide. And we'll get to the next slide, I hope. There we go. So semiquincentennial. I promise this isn't a word that I just made up. It's actually a Latin word. It derives from the Latin word semi, which means half, quinque, which means 5, and centum, which means 100. So this is a word that means the 250th anniversary. And I promise you, it wasn't a word that I made up that had 250 syllables that would be hard to pronounce. Next slide. So this year, July 4th, we celebrate America's semiquincentennial, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. For those of you who are history buffs, you might note that the Declaration was actually approved by Congress on July 2nd. And President John Adams, our second president, famously said that years from now, generations of Americans will be toasting on July 2nd. He even prepared a toast for that date. The toast was, "I will give you independence forever." Of course, that never came to pass because John Adams died actually before he had a chance to utter it, but also because we celebrate July 4th as our Independence Day. Next slide. So for those of you who are old enough, you'll remember that America celebrated its bicentennial in 1976. President Gerald Ford led a series of events and commemorations across the country. Some of you may even have some of those commemorative quarters with the drummer boy on the back that they printed. Here you can also see a postage stamp. This picture here actually illustrates or depicts bicentennial parade. This looks like it's in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. Fabulous trivia fact. San Francisco also celebrated its bicentennial that year. The Presidio was founded by the Spanish sometime in April of 1776, followed by the Mission, which was founded in October 1776. So this year will be no different throughout the country. Various places will be celebrating the now 250th anniversary of America's birth. Next slide. So there are two big organizations that are helping with our national celebrations. The first one I wanted to talk to you about is the Semiquincentennial Commission, better known as America 250. And you recognize them by the ribbon logo, as you can see here on the page. America 250 was created by Congress, and it is the official nonpartisan, bipartisan, public-private organization dedicated with hosting celebrations for America's 250th. And if you go to their website at america250.org, you can see there's a whole host of events that they're doing. Next slide. Among these events are the American Story, America's Field Trip, and America Gives. If any of you were at CES this past week, you'll see kind of the Airstream trailer in the left hand as part of the American Story. They brought the trailer actually to CES, and people were invited to kind of experience the American story through them at that exhibit. So it's one of those great things that you can kind of experience no matter where you are in the country, because it'll be traveling around. But they have a number of other initiatives that I recommend that you all check it out. Next slide. So the second group that is dedicated to helping celebrate this anniversary is what I like to call Freedom 250. This is a nonprofit that is organized under the auspices of the National Parks Foundation. It is a public-private partnership. America 250 is also a strategic partner of this, and they are going to be hosting a lot of the big ticket item events that are going to be going on throughout the year. Their website is freedom250.org, and if you visit their website, you can see a lot of the big ticket items. There's a calendar of events there. Next slide, please. Now, if you were in Washington, D.C. over the new year, one of the things that they put on was the Washington Monument lighting. And I'll ask to play the video here while I'm talking so you can see kind of what that was about. But the first time ever, they lit up the Washington Monument with projections on all four sides. And there were various displays, including the one that you'll see here. You can see there goes the rocket ship up the side of the Washington Monument. In addition, they're also hosting the National Prayer Gathering, the Great American State Fair, Teddy Roosevelt Library Grand Opening, Patriot Games, where they're going to bring together athletes from all 50 states and all 6 U.S. territories to compete in various athletic events. And then, of course, it'll culminate with a fireworks celebration on the mall. The Great American State Fair is also going to be on the mall, so the fireworks will be over the fair at the same time. And so if you find yourself in the mood to travel, I recommend that you check out some of these events and travel to them. It's going to be a great year to celebrate. Next slide. So the United States Patent and Trademark Office has a working group that is dedicated to marking this important anniversary. As you know, the Patent Office isn't quite 250 years old. We were actually established in 1790, and our historian will talk to you more about that next. But we have still been around in some sort of form or concept, because the Patent Office is mentioned a little bit in the Constitution. So we're here and we're going to celebrate the anniversary, and we're planning a series of events and activities over the course of the year. And some of them will invite the public to participate in. Next slide. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to be celebrating 250 years of innovation. And this includes celebrating our top American inventions and brands that have shaped the last 250 years. If you think of a lot of our everyday items that we use, whether it be around the house or, if we're traveling or, we're making things, a lot of these things were invented here in America, and we have an incredible tradition of innovation, and we have an incredible legacy of brands. American brands are recognized all throughout the globe, and no other country has ever had this sort of type of reach in the history of humanity. So we're going to be celebrating that. And a lot of our celebrations will be on social media, where you'll be able to see us highlight each week, starting in a couple weeks, various sort of themes in American innovation and American branding. Next slide. In addition, we will also be having an enhanced partnership to mark America's 250th birthday with the National Inventors Hall of Fame. If you've ever been to our headquarters here in Alexandria, NIF has a National Inventors Hall of Fame museum. It's an incredible museum. It's great. Bring your family, bring students, bring friends. And then each year they do a gala to recognize important inventors of the year and also inventors from the past. And I invite you to visit invent.org to learn more about them, but they're going to be doing some thematic programming around America's 250th birthday, both in their museum and also at their gala. And As a government employee, I can't tell you to go buy tickets to this gala, but as a private citizen, I can say it's a great event, and it's definitely worth checking out once. They'll have information on their website as the event gets closer in early May. Next slide. Here on campus at the USPTO, we will be having a public celebration for our employees, and everyone who's in the area is invited to come. The celebrations will be in the public areas of our building. Will include things like food trucks, a possible historical reenactment, and some live music. We're probably going to do it, it looks like July 1st, 2026. It's a Wednesday. So it'd be a great way for those who really make innovation work here in America for you to join them and to celebrate this momentous occasion. Next slide. We'll also be doing a commemorative patent cover. It'll be available a little later this year for all patents issued in 2026. They will be available for a small fee. The fee is to cover, of course, the printing costs, but a great way to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation by having kind of a commemorative patent cover to celebrate the future of innovation, which is the new patents that are coming out every single day. Next slide. So with that, we look forward to celebrating with all of you. It's again a momentous occasion, and it's going to be a great year. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Christy. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jason. You know, it's so great to hear about all of the events that are taking place to celebrate America's birthday. So now we know what to look forward to for the 250th celebration and how the USPTO is involved. But when and how did the agency get here? Well, that's what our next presenter, Becky Oakes, historian, is going to share with us. Becky, over to you.
Thanks, Christy, for the fantastic intro, and welcome everyone. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us this afternoon. So today I'm going to do a brief overview of the history of the agency and the more than 200 years of innovation history in the United States, and I'll share some resources where you can also learn more. So if we can go to the first slide. First, what can studying the past teach us about solving problems and the importance of intellectual property protection? So first, we can see that most inventions were not immediately life-changing. For the vast majority of US history, there was incremental progress over time, gradual improvements based on previous attempts that culminated in things that really did change how we live and how we interact with our world. This is also the case with the development of the intellectual property system. So we didn't have changes overnight. Things kind of gradually developed until they culminated into these kind of landmark moments that we'll talk about today. We can also delve into what people invented and what that can tell us about what was important to their society at that time. So people seeking to solve problems tend to solve problems that are prevalent in their daily lives. And through the patent and trademark record, we can see what was really on people's minds at different parts of American history. Studying history also shows how ever-present innovation is in our daily lives. So much of what we use now or interact with or even take for granted was once a new and novel invention that probably went through the halls of the US Patent and Trademark Office at some time. So with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about the development of that office and how the intellectual property system has been kind of created, grown, and improved over the years in order to better support the innovators of our country. So you can go to the next slide. So as Jason mentioned, our innovation system has underpinnings in the US Constitution. So the foundations of the intellectual property system go back to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the Constitution, which we now refer to as the Intellectual Property Clause. And that clause charges Congress with the power to promote the progress of science and the useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive rights to their respective writings and discoveries. So you'll notice that it does not directly use the term patent. But this clause was the origin of both patent and copyright law in the United States. So in addition to science, we also have the useful arts, and we have inventors and authors. So that's where both of those systems kind of harken back to. After the Constitution was ratified, it didn't take long for the federal government to begin to build out an infrastructure to support this clause and make it a reality. So we'll learn about that a little in the next slide. So in his very first address to Congress in January of 1790, an address that would later become known as the State of the Union, President George Washington urged legislators to give that effectual encouragement to new and useful inventions. So kind of taking that intellectual property clause and bringing it to reality with legislation. Congress acted quickly on this, and the first Patent Act in the United States was passed by April of that year. Patent Act of 1790 created the first patent board, which was the group of people charged with examining patents and either approving or denying the claim. And this was composed of the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of War, Henry Knox, and Attorney General Edmund Randolph, who began the task of examining patents. The first U.S. patent was granted on July 31st of 1790, so less than 1 year after George Washington gave that congressional address. However, this process was time-consuming, and it was only one of the many duties that the Patent Board was assigned to as members of George Washington's cabinet. So on our next slide, we'll see how they kind of dealt with that challenge. The Patent Board quickly became overwhelmed by this requirement to thoroughly examine each application, and in response, Congress greatly simplified the examination process with another Patent Act in 1793. So just 3 years later, the examination process shifted, and basically if an applicant followed the instructions and paid the fee, they were likely to receive their patent. Another development was in 1802, a standalone patent office was created under the Department of State, and this allowed for a more specialized focus on that task. And William Thornton became that office's first employee and the first office head, as taking on the role of superintendent. William Thornton held this position for 26 years, and he had a profound influence on the development of the early office. His dedication was on display during the War of 1812, when he famously convinced British soldiers not to burn the Patent Office during the sacking of Washington, D.C. And for a brief period of time, the entire federal government was actually operating out of the Patent Office as one of the sole surviving federal buildings. Thornton also advocated for patents to be more rigorously examined. So to go back to that examination requirement that existed at the beginning of the patent system. And although he would not see a return to examination in his lifetime, his wishes for the office played out in the Patent Act of 1836, which we'll learn about in the next slide. More than 40 years after that first Patent Act, inventors, legislators, and the Patent Office all saw the need for a stricter examination process, but they also saw the need for the infrastructure to support it. So the Patent Act of 1836 contained among many pivotal recommendations. It included introducing a patent numbering system. Patents before this weren't numbered, and they were organized by the inventor's name. All patents issued before July of 1836 are now known as the X patents because they were retroactively given a number and affixed with the letter X. It also reintroduced the examination requirement, and pivotally, it hired a corps of professional examiners to do this work. So we started with one examiner in 1836, and the examination corps has grown since then. It also established a library of prior art, so allowing examiners resources where they could go to see what was invented in the past and determine whether or not a patent application was for a new and novel invention. Inventor John Ruggles, who was granted U.S. patent number 1 under the following this act, which is a different patent than the first U.S. patent. And he was also the senator who sponsored the legislation. So this is a particularly unique example of inventors and legislators working together, but we see this as a trend throughout the development of the intellectual property system. You can go to the next slide. The Patent Act of 1836 kicked off a period of growth for the office, but it was not without its challenges. On December 15th of that same year, a catastrophic fire destroyed the Patent Office, as well as many of the patent documents and models held within. And basically, the records of the nation's first 46 years of innovation went up in smoke. Congress appropriated about $100,000 to restore the lost patent drawings and models, some of which dated back all the way to 1790. And around 2,800 of the X patents were indeed recovered. But that was out of nearly 10,000 total, and the vast majority were lost to history. The search for the missing X patents actually continues to this day. People still occasionally find them in research repositories, museums, and even in attics and at auctions. So we're still kind of recovering some of the records of this lost past era of innovation. And the Patent Office, despite the fire, continued to grow. So if we can go to the next slide. Even prior to the fire, construction on the first purpose-built patent office was underway in Washington, D.C. This building spanned an entire city block, and the office opened its doors in 1840. This was not only an office, but it was the first federally funded museum in Washington, D.C., and it was a premier tourist attraction. So visitors to the nation's capital would actually come to the patent office to see not only the latest in American innovation, but special artifacts from the past, including the Declaration of Independence, which was actually on display at the Patent Office until America's centennial celebration in 1876. The scope of the patent system at this time was expanding as well. Design patents were added to the Bank of Intellectual Property Protections that were available in 1842. And that was, again, following the advocacy of innovators. So in particular, inventors from the cast iron stove industry. You can go to the next slide. The Civil War presented a challenging time, another challenging time for the Patent Office. Patent grants slowed during this conflict, and many members of the workforce enlisted in the armed forces. The office itself was used first as a barracks and later as a hospital for sick and wounded Union soldiers. And in 1865, the office was the site of President Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural ball. Lincoln also holds the distinction as the only U.S. president to have received a U.S. patent, which he was granted prior to his presidency. Next slide. Following the Civil War, rapid industrialization and expansion of the federal government infrastructure led to a period of time that many historians refer to as the golden age of American innovation. There's a few reasons for this. In 1870, a patent application fee was $35, which was still a barrier to access for many, but it was uniquely affordable compared to other nations with formal patent systems, where the fee could delve into the hundreds of dollars. This accessibility encouraged independent inventors to not only seek out solutions to problems, but file for a patent. Just two examples on the screen here. Margaret Knight invented a machine to make flat-bottomed paper bags. So if you think of the bags that you might bring a brown bag of lunch in, that's an invention that we still use today. Jan Metzelliger invented an automatic shoe lasting machine, which allowed high-quality shoes to be mass-produced for the first time. So two inventors who had an impact on daily life and did so as independent inventors who were trying to solve a problem in their industries. The Patent Examination Corps at this time was also growing. So in 1870, the Examination Corps numbered 66, who were in those 66 examiners were supported by dozens of clerks, copyists, and other support staff. So these examiners, although 66 might not seem like a large number to us today, if we compare that to the one examiner who was hired in 1836, we can see that exponential growth of the Patent Corps. You go to the next slide. The office at this time was also growing in other ways. Mass manufacturing and the Transcontinental Railroad allowed companies and brands to market to a nationwide audience, and that drove the need for national trademark protection. The first federal trademark was registered to the Averell Chemical Paint Company in 1870. However, there were some growing pains there as well. The practice of registering trademarks under that same intellectual property clause was challenged in the court system and eventually reached the United States Supreme Court. In what we call the trademark cases, the Supreme Court ruled that the intellectual property clause could not be used to register trademarks nationally in 1879. And in response, Congress gave the agency the power to register trademarks under the Constitution's Commerce Clause. So we actually have two different clauses at the USPTO that protect the work that we do. Next slide. Throughout the 20th century, the office continued to expand and evolve, and we have just a few highlights to share here from that century. In 1925, the Patent Office was moved to the Department of Commerce from the Department of the Interior, and by this time, the Examination Corps numbered over 600 examiners, and it would continue to grow throughout the century. In 1930, Congress passed the Plant Patent Act, following years of advocacy by horticulturalists. And this allowed unique cultivars of certain plants to receive patent protection. In 1946, the Lanham Act, which was America's foundational trademark law, was signed, and this shaped today's modern trademark registration system. Finally, trademark was added to the agency's name in 1975, 105 years after the first federally registered trademark was registered. Next slide. Looking to the future and looking kind of at the past 50 years, we've seen an exponential growth in both the number of patent applications and trademark registrations, and the impact of those trends still remains to be seen. The office will certainly continue to navigate changes, but we can see from the past 200 years of agency history, those changes have the potential to help the intellectual property system grow into its next era of existence. If we can go to the final slide. If you'd like to learn more about either the history of the agency or innovators more broadly, I encourage you to visit the history section of our website. I think we're going to drop the link in the chat. This section also contains a patent milestones page that gives a timeline of some of the milestones that we discussed today and several more. Follow us on social media where we share information about the history of the agency and some history of inventors and entrepreneurs. And then also check out our Journeys of Innovation series where we highlight an in-depth articles of historical inventors. And we're going to hear a little bit more about the Journeys of Innovation series next. But first, I'm going to pass things back to Christy. Thank you all for spending a little bit of time with us talking about the history of the agency.
Thank you, Becky. That was fantastic. Now, I'm pretty sure if anyone watching isn't interested in history, they are now, because you definitely changed their mind after watching that. So thank you, Becky, once again. Now I'd like to introduce you to Whitney Pandle-Eaton, who is going to take us on a journey of innovation. Whitney?
Thank you so much, Christy. I really appreciate it. Like Christy said, my name is Whitney Pandle-Eaton, and I am thrilled to talk to you all today about a program that is near and dear to my heart, our Journeys of Innovation series. It is the agency's flagship outreach and innovator recognition program. Each month, the USPTO seeks to inspire and encourage innovation by sharing relatable stories that chronicle the journeys of inventors and entrepreneurs. We shed light on where they got their start, the challenges they faced, and what it took to bring their ideas to fruition and their brands to life. So the stories also emphasize the importance of creating and protecting intellectual property and the critical role it plays in innovation. So I encourage anyone here to check out our full archive of more than 80 stories on our USPTO.gov. So next slide, please. Next slide, sorry. Having interviewed and researched dozens of inventors and entrepreneurs over the years, the Journeys of Innovation team has learned that there are three main driving forces propelling inventors and entrepreneurs forward. They're not mutually exclusive by any means, and they often overlap, but the pattern we've noticed are these three drivers. Necessity, as the old adage goes, necessity is the mother of invention. We also have noticed impact, and that's typically when an inventor or entrepreneur is personally affected and then they take action. And then lastly, innate, which as Americans, I think we're well versed in. You know, we strive to discover new ways of doing things, or we strive to create things that have never been created. So with that, I would like to highlight a few of our Journeys of Innovation stories, just to highlight a few of these different drivers of innovation. So next slide, please. Our first one is Harriet Williams Russell Strong. A recent widow and mother of 4 daughters, Harriet Strong became the sole owner of a California ranch on the brink of financial ruin. Despite being untrained and suffering the effects of a lifelong spinal issue, Strong threw herself into learning all she could about the business of agriculture. She read voraciously through scientific books and journals while enlisting the help of other local ranchers who could answer her questions about water, crops, soil, marketing, you name it. What she learned through this research is that walnuts were among the most profitable of crops. So on her ranch, she planted 150 acres. Now, while walnuts are profitable, they require copious amounts of water. So to mitigate the flash floods that regularly devastated the land and to capture stormwater for later agricultural use, Strong designed elaborate irrigation and water control systems. She created a series of ascending dams that helped store water while also acting as a reinforcement for the dam above. So starting in 1887, she patented several inventions for dam and reservoir construction and irrigation systems. Harriet Strong saved her farm and became a leading voice in water conservation policy. She advocated for a national irrigation system, and her ideas would be the inspiration for the famous Hoover Dam, as well as the All-American Canal, the world's largest irrigation canal carrying water from the Colorado River into California's Imperial Valley. All right, next slide, please. Our next inventor is Betty Naismith Graham. Betty is a single mom who struggled to support her son on her secretarial salary. We've all experienced technological learning curves, and Betty was no different. During the 1950s, many offices transitioned from manual typewriters to electric typewriters. While electric typewriters helped to automate many processes, increasing efficiency, the messy carbon film ribbons and sensitive keys resulted in numerous typos. An eraser could be used to fix the mistake, but the carbon ink would smear all over the page, necessitating the remake of a document for a single error. Betty served as the executive assistant for the chairman of a Texas bank. She was highly skilled overall in her position, but her typing was subpar. She made frequent errors, and for that, she tried a variety of ways to fix it in order to having to redo a document completely. One day, Betty bought a jar of white water-based tempera paint and began to use that to cover up the typos with a watercolor brush. It worked so well that her employers and also her colleagues seldom noticed. So she quietly used this liquid creation for a time until other secretaries in the office took notice and flooded her with requests for their own bottles of the wonder fluid. So she was encouraged by this positive response. She thrust herself fully into the endeavor, eventually creating the now iconic liquid paper corrective fluid using a trade secret formula. And that took her over a decade to perfect. So what started off as a simple way, or not so simple way, to save her livelihood transformed into a multi-million-dollar business that revolutionized the office supply industry of the 20th century. And next slide, please. All right, let's talk about another inventor, Garrett Morgan. Having in Cleveland's bustling factories in the late 1890s, Garrett Morgan knew firsthand how dangerous industrial buildings could be for workers and firefighters alike. Volatile chemicals resulted in frequent explosions. Discarded cotton and fibrous materials served as kindling for potential fires. Cramped working conditions on multiple levels made emergency escape difficult. Morgan identified one consistent issue with industrial fires. Due to the heavy, often chemical-laden smoke, firefighters were not able to enter buildings and rescue survivors without becoming victims themselves. So Morgan took it upon himself to address that. So in 1914, Morgan received 2 patents for a smoke hood, as you can see in the photo. The invention consisted of a hood with a hanging air tube attached, which could allow a firefighter to breathe cleaner air from near the floor or momentarily place the hose out of a window. So it allowed firefighters or workers in poorly ventilated spaces to momentarily occupy those without suffocating. So, and Morgan himself would put this device to the test when he and others were called in to rescue a group that was trapped under hundreds of feet of debris while a tunnel was being constructed under Lake Erie. So using that apparatus, the team pulled out 8 survivors. Another safety-minded invention of Morgan's involved traffic safety. So while he was driving with his 2 young sons in a car in the 1920s, he and the boys witnessed a collision between an automobile and a horse-drawn carriage at an intersection, which resulted in a young girl being thrown, being ejected, and then a horse needing to be humanely euthanized in the street. Wanting to prevent incidents like this from happening, Morgan again devised and patented an improved traffic signal. So unlike earlier versions, his traffic signal included a vital in-between step between stop and go, which we now know as the yellow caution light. Okay, and next slide. Next, we have Kevin White. So Kevin White, as a young man, he ran into walls a lot. He ran into walls often enough that his mother took the then 7-year-old to the doctor to have his eyes checked. Diagnosed with 20/50 vision, White was provided a pair of eyeglasses that, while not immediately earth-shattering, would set the stage for his later invention. So fast forward 20 years, and Kevin is now an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps. During his 2 decades of service, he traveled to several countries around the world and discovered the same problem: a lack of adequate eye health care. So let me quickly paint a picture for you. Globally, more than 2 billion people suffer from refractive error, which is often known as near or distance vision impairment, according to data from the World Health Organization. Of that total, the United Nations agency notes that more than half of those cases could have been prevented. It is the world's largest unmet disability. That is a fact that Kevin could not abide. After retiring from the military service, White spent the next decade researching and developing his portable vision testing kit. Since receiving his patent in 2022, White, through his business-to-business nonprofit, Global Vision 2020, he has reached more than 750,000 people in 67 nations. And I just want to share a quick story to kind of highlight the impact. So a granddaughter brought her 83-year-old widowed grandmother into a clinic in Rwanda to have her vision tested using White's kit. Unable to see clearly for the last 3 decades, the grandmother relied heavily on her family to perform daily activities. So after testing using his invention, the grandmother was given a pair of prescription reading glasses as well as distance glasses, and was asked to read by a local nurse. Using the reading glasses, not only was she able to read for the first time in 30 years, but because of both prescriptions, she was able to navigate her surroundings independently and was able to perform household chores and activities of daily living. So for $10 worth of glasses, the grandmother became the matriarch of her family, and that enabled her older grandchildren to enter the workforce or to go to school, and that the younger children were able to be cared for properly and educated by the grandmother. Okay, next slide, please. Next up is Olin Lagone. Olin, who has patents across multiple industries involving crowdfunding and machine learning, he likes to keep his brain unwired. And what this means is that he takes 2 to 3 classes annually on diverse topics. Think cloud technology, Greek memory classes, slap key guitar lessons, to name a few. And so he takes these classes instead of focusing on a particular industry, technology, or topic. So I'm going to quote him here. He says that innovation is nothing more than 2 really different things colliding together. When your brain starts to learn these different things, I think worlds collide. As a native Hawaiian, the cultural aspects of intent and interconnectedness, known as malama ana in Hawaiian, are essential to Olin's work. He builds off the ancestral knowledge of the past to tackle the problems of the day. Again, 2 worlds colliding. So, like many innovators, Olin's inspiration for his work often comes from unlikely places. He is a founder in crowdsourcing software. How did that come about? It came from a familiar office occurrence I'm sure we've all come across. After Olin's oldest son was born, his colleagues sent around a congratulations card and took gift card donations, but both the card and the gift cards arrived late due to logistical issues and an insufficient process. Thus, he went about tackling that problem. Now, for Olin's newest business, it's an energy company that focuses on optimizing home appliance energy usage using machine learning. The idea came for him after he hit a roadblock and reached out to an unlikely source for help, Reddit. Olin asked some simple questions and connected with a person from Georgia who had a type of general purpose circuit he was looking for. He bought the circuits, used some over-the-counter parts to build his prototype, recruited some volunteers to test, and then voila, he now has his brand new business. Highlighting the innate inventor within, Olin never innovates in the same industry. His reasoning is that many times, quote unquote, experts will miss opportunities because they're stuck in an institutional mindset. Olin prefers to enter new industries, and I quote, with the wisdom of children, like everything is brand new and possible. And next slide, please. Last but not least, I would like to highlight Rory Cooper. As a kid growing up in Southern Cal, Rory ran track and country, but he was also found often in his parents' garage, tinkering and making improvements with skateboards and bicycles. So his world was turned upside down when, while serving in the US Army, and he was being stationed in Germany, he was paralyzed from the waist down after being hit by a bus while riding his bike. Instead of lamenting the 10-year lifespan prognosis doctors gave him, Roy immediately began pursuing steps that would lead him to becoming one of the world's experts in human mobility and accessibility engineering. So building off that childhood love of tinkering, Rory and his colleagues developed technologies ranging from advanced wheelchair design and robotic devices to seat cushions and wearable health instruments for people with disabilities. Even with more than 25 grants to his name, Rory's biggest invention, he says, was the creation of the Human Engineering Research Labs at the University of Pittsburgh. Through the lab's connection to University of Pittsburgh Medical Center's Center for Assistive Technology, Rory and his team learn about real-life challenges of people experience mobility issues that can then be researched and work towards a solution. So, and just like Olin, Rory also encourages people to keep learning and seeking out people from a variety of backgrounds. To quote Rory, a lot of invention is really taking bits and pieces. You're seeing a problem, learning how to translate that problem into a potential solution or pathway to a solution, and then being able to integrate a lot of different knowledge from different disciplines. That is it for me. I appreciate your time, and I highly encourage you to go to our website and read about all of the fascinating and inspiring inventors we have in our Journeys of Innovation archive. So I will turn it back over to you. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you, Whitney, for telling these inspirational stories through the Journeys of Innovation and for sharing them with us today. Just a quick plug, folks, we'd love to hear from you, so please send your questions to USPTO@USPTO.gov. Now on to our last, but certainly not least, presenter, Scott Armstrong. Scott is going to do a live demonstration on how to navigate our website. Scott, over to you.
Thanks, Christy. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in on USPTO Hour. I'm going to show you a quick walkthrough on the website. Not so much the whole website itself, as it's about 14,000 web pages, so I'm not going to take your time to go through all of those. But what I am going to do is show you how all the cool information or all the useful information that you can find on our homepage. Next slide, please. So some of the resources you may be looking, why would I want to go to the homepage? The homepage doesn't have the information I need or that I want, but there is a lot of useful information there for you. You can discover there's a lot of useful resources for direct links to the tools that we have. We can show you how to quickly get to the basics of intellectual property. So, you know, what is a patent? What is a trademark? Instead of trying to search the whole site, there's actually places on that homepage that will allow you to find that information quickly. You can stay updated on USPTO news, either through the stuff that we highlight or by subscribing to our email, or not to our email, but subscribing and to particular topics that would be of interest to you. And you can also see where we are highlighting information such as events, things of that sort that would really help you on your intellectual property protection journey. So we can also highlight other things on how you can protect yourself from scams, as well as certain featured things that we think you should know about and really be aware of. All right, so as you can see here, this is our homepage. Most people skip over the homepage because the information here isn't really worth their time, or you already know where you want to go to get stuff done. But sometimes, if let's say you bookmark a bunch of stuff, but you lost your bookmarks, or you're brand new to the intellectual property field, there are tools here on this page that you may not be aware of. So for instance, you want to search for a patent or a trademark or you want to apply, you can find it here under our Find It Fast menu. Find It Fast is broken down, as you can see, into patents and trademark sections so that you can specifically see all the tools that are available to you under that particular topic. So again, search for patents, it's right there, and the tool that you can use to do that with is found with a hyperlink below, as well as applying for a trademark or a patent, as well as wanting to be able to pay fees. So here we have specialized it right here from the home screen that you can get directly to those tools that are useful to you. Now, with that in mind, down here further at the bottom, you can see that there are some stuff that are kind of separated from their both. These are tools that you can use for both patents and trademarks. They allow you, so if you need something, let's say you want to change the ownership of a particular document or record, you can see it down here with our assignment center, but it's good for both patents and trademarks. You want to pay for fees or make a payment, it'll take you directly to this page, and then you can see what our current fee schedules are for both patents and trademarks. So this is a quick way to get to information that is useful to you. Now, one of the things I really want you to do is, because all these are web-based tools, sometimes they need maintenance. Sometimes they have problems and they go down. In order for you to be able to know what's going on, down here at the bottom, we have our system status. System status, when you click on this, allows you to see information about what's going on with one of those tools. So as you can see here, everything's operating normally. We're good to go. But we do have some upcoming and planned events. This helps you to hopefully plan when you should use the tool or when the tool is going to not be available for you until after we've done either a particular maintenance or something that's happened. You can always click on it for more information, as well as just stay on top of what's going on with the tools that are available to you. So you're like, great. Okay, now I understand that I can get directly to the tools, but I'm new to intellectual property. What do I do? Well, we have this whole section right here for you about new to intellectual property. We tried to make it pretty upfront for you. But as you can see here, you can understand the basics of patents or trademarks. It's quickly available to you. Instead of having to search through one of these menus up here, it's already there. Now, we can also provide you information. What if you don't know whether or not you have where your intellectual property falls? Do I need a patent? Do I need a trademark? Is it a copyright? What if it's a trade secret? I don't know what it is. We have that tool for you right here. You can identify with our IP identifier tool exactly what you have by answering a few questions. Walk through this, and by the time you reach the end, you will actually have the information you need to begin your IP patent protection journey. If you're an inventor, like we mentioned with the journeys of innovation, or an entrepreneur, you're starting your own business, but you just don't know where to start, we got that spot for you right here too. Inventor and Entrepreneur Resources. Right here, we start you from A through B, A through Z, for getting started through the application process, just information you need. Go to Inventor and Entrepreneur Resources, and we have provided for you a lot of information that should help you as you move forward in your journey. This is a great resource. I know there's a lot of information here, but there's a lot of information to work with in order to get through the patent or trademark application processes. We do have, for those who are trying to do everything on their own, we do have a resource for you for access or free services. This allows you to go through and see what is available for little to no cost. Now, if you can see here, you can filter it all based off of what you're really trying to do. You need a legal assistance, you can get rid of the rest of this stuff here, and you'll be able to see what legal assistance for whatever type of topic you're looking for. And we will either take you directly to the website or the web page on USPTO.gov that will help you out. You're like, okay, great. I can see that there's something for people who are new, some people who have experience or just getting started. But what if I wanted to learn more? We got you covered there. Right here, we have our public events. Public events are things that the USPTO offers that are, as we say, public, so that you can sign up just like you did with USPTO Hour. But here we highlight some of those events for you. All the events that we have that are upcoming are found on our events page that you can scroll through and choose which one you like. And then like you did with this one, register and just be ready to be educated, hopefully maybe even entertained, but most of all, learn about the subjects that matter to you most that we're putting on. So now we know about events. Now we know about those who are new to IP, how you can find the tools. But what if you just want information about the agency? That's where our latest news section comes in. Latest news, this is where we highlight some of the most important things that are going on in the agency that may impact you or that may impact the world, the United States. But here's where you'll find that information. Now, this is only some highlights. What I'd really suggest that you do is subscribe to the bunch of topics that the agency pushes out via email. You can do that by either clicking on the subscribe button under here, or at the very bottom of the page, typing in your email address and click subscribe. Follow the instructions, select the topics that you want to know most about, and then you will be on your way to learning everything you want to know that we're pushing out news-wise, information-wise, policy-wise, so that you will be informed to the best of your ability by just going to your email and not having to come to our website all the time. If you want more news, you can always click here, see what we have, and filter it the way you want so that you can see what we've been doing over the past. All this stuff is available to you right here from the home screen. So the last thing I want to make mention of is how we highlight certain information that we think is really important. So take, for instance, oops, not that part, but right here, scams on the rise. Scams are a big deal right now when it comes to patents and trademarks. So we want to make sure that it was up front, right here, ready for you. And clicking on one of these buttons, patents for patent scam prevention, or trademark, recognizing common scams for trademarks, that information is up front right there. And we highlight that to make sure you can see it first and immediately, and we can bring it to your attention. Now, if you scroll down to the bottom, it's the last thing I'm going to go over is down here. These are not advertisements. So the things, these little squares down here that you see, those aren't advertisements in the sense of that they're paid for by anybody. This is us advertising ourselves and the tools or the subject matter that we think is important. So don't skip over that information. Make sure that you click on this so that you can see what's really going on and what we think you should be informed about. So like USPTO Hour right there in the middle, we got a bunch more coming and we think you should really take a look at it and participate. Again, we're identifying the IP identifier just because that's an amazing tool to help those who are just starting out understand that. But even for those who have trademarks, we have the ability for you to, we actually have a walk-in instructions about how to check on your trademark application status. So again, this is the information we try to do. Don't skip over our homepage. There's a lot of stuff here that is immediately available to you. If you have any questions, by all means, check here first, because I bet you're going to find what you're looking for. I think that's it for me. Christy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Scott. I can't tell you how many times a day I'm looking at our website, and I always find what I'm looking for right there. So great presentation. Thank you, Scott. And I'd like to invite our presenters back on the screen with me, Whitney and Jason and Becky. I want to thank you all so much for presenting today, all wonderful presentations, and I just know that the audience definitely learned something. So folks, that's all that we have for today. That's all the time that we have, but we want to thank you again for joining us. Today's session was recorded and will be placed on our webpage along with the slides at USPTO.gov, the website, and you know exactly where to find it. Scott showed you that. So be sure to check that out. Also, I hope that you'll tune in next Wednesday for the next iteration of our USPTO Hour, which is going to be hosted by our patents team. So thank you all again so much and have a great day.